Hello everybody, welcome to the penultimate session of the Yellow Wallpaper course, session 5, and we will be looking at today why Charlotte Perkins Gilman wrote the Yellow Wallpaper. Now, as I said last session, she did actually write a piece called Why I Wrote the Yellow Wallpaper, so we will find out why. But first of all, I just want to link to the assessment objectives for literature. And give you a chance to think about the answers to some of these questions that will follow. So in GCSE literature, the description for the context assessment objective is written here. So you need to be able to relate texts to their social, cultural and historical contexts, explain how texts have been influential and significant to self and other readers in different contexts and at different times. So what you do when you study Of Mice and Men, I keep using that as an example because it's one that I know that we've all done and all finished. We looked at what it meant to be a woman in 1930s America, what it meant to be a person of colour in 1930s America, what it meant to be, and so on, didn't we? So we were looking at the social and the cultural and the historical context there. We also looked at, why does Steinbeck write this novel? What is he trying to teach us here? And that is looking at how they've been influential. And the significant to self bit really comes if you make a personal response to a text. However, the requirement to make a personal response is the lowest band, which is why really when we look at top band, we don't push people to make overtly personal responses because it's quite a simplistic thing to do. Anyway, so we'll look now at the description for the assessment objective 3, context at A level, is slimmed down, as you can see. You need to demonstrate understanding of the significance and influence of the context in which literary texts are written and received. And I have spoken about this previously, that it's not just why Charlotte Perkins Gilman wrote it, obviously that's what we're going to look at today, but also how do we receive it? How was it received in the 1890s when it was published? How is it received now? That sort of thing. So it's basically the same thing, but a slimmed down description. And when it comes to A level, there are different descriptors for the different bands beneath this. This is the sort of what you need to do. Then the gradients of doing this are split into bands, but this is the what. So first of all, and you'll need to pause me in a moment, I want you to think about these questions based on everything you know about Charlotte Perkins Gilman, about the Yellow Wallpaper. What do you think her intentions were with the Yellow Wallpaper? Why do you think she wrote it? What did she want to show or expose? Have a think about, those questions are interlinked. I don't want 3 separate answers. I want you to consider those questions and come up with a response to those questions as a whole. So pause me now, think about that. Okay, welcome back. So we're not going to dwell on that too much. We're going to read what she said. So I would, if I were you, pause this and read this now. I'm not going to read it to you, so pause. Okay, you will have your own sort of understanding there of what you've read. And my understanding is she suffered from a nervous breakdown and went to a doctor for help. He suggested the rest cure and told her to live a domestic life. This almost drove her mad, so she ignored him and began to work again. Basically, that's what happened to her. And the why she wrote it was because she could see that this rest cure was absolutely ridiculous. Actually, I'll come back to that in a minute. I just want to talk about this. She did send, as she said, a copy to the physician who nearly drove her mad, and he never acknowledged it. But what she says is that she does go on to, she saved people. And then the best result is this. Many years later, I was told that the great specialist had admitted to friends of his that he had altered his treatment of neurasthenia since reading the yellow wallpaper. So it was not intended to drive people crazy, but to save people from being driven crazy. And it worked, which I think is wonderful. So we've got this context now, this further context. But to get the best marks in AO3, we need to use that context, okay? So you should then start asking questions of this because it will not be given to you. At GCSE, we would give you our thoughts and off you go, but we're not going to do this. So you now then you should have your own questions here and start researching. So, for example, my question would be, if I didn't know anything already about it, is what was the rest cure? I want to know what that is. I need to understand it more to be able to access this piece that, justifying or explaining the writing of the yellow wallpaper, but also to understand the yellow wallpaper itself. So I need to know. So as I've said here, your reading might lead you to ask more questions, and that's great. But be sure to make all reference relevant in your essay titles. I don't know what I mean. I mean to say titles there. Do I mean to say essays? I don't know. I think I might have gone a bit strange when I wrote that. What I mean is you can't just write down everything you want to write about because you've learned it. You need to obviously make it relevant. So I've done some research here into the rest cure. Okay, and I'm going to give you a moment to read that all. So pause it. Okay, now what I've done is I've highlighted some bits that I'm going to use in my sort of analysis of the yellow wallpaper, because as I said on the right here, in order to score high marks for AO3 for the content, you need to engage with what you learn and use it to cast light on what you're studying, not just put it in, like, oh, this is some context. Ooh, there we go. We need to use it. So I've said here, it describes here the rescue, and it says effectively reduced to the dependency of an infant. So the patients were effectively reduced to the dependency of an infant. How can I use that? Well, the yellow wallpaper, she sets the story in a nursery. Is that linked to her understanding of the rest cure? And I would explore that. Patients were sometimes prohibited from talking, reading, writing, and even sewing. I think that's an obvious connection there that we can make, but that is exactly what happens to our narrator. It also removed the patient from a potentially toxic social atmosphere at home. Did it? Because what's happened here is because John is husband and doctor, she is not sent away to rest. She is kept with him and rested. And so actually there's an irony here. The rest cure was meant to remove patients from a potentially toxic social atmosphere at home, but what happens in the yellow wallpaper is she is trapped in a potentially toxic social atmosphere at home and is driven mad. So we could look at that. We could look at this notion of the patients are almost always female. What that would lead me to do now is to ask some more questions. Why were they almost always female? Because, and I've mentioned before, because a lot of female experiences were seen as illnesses, menstruation being one of them. So you might want to look into that. And why were they almost always female? And then later feminist scholars argued the rest cure reinforced an archaic and oppressive notion that women should submit unquestioningly to male authority because it was good for their health. And again, we can link back to the yellow wallpaper because, again, John is husband and doctor, so our narrator had no escape. And she is not submitting to a male doctor. She's submitting to a male doctor who is also her husband. And we need to link always back to what we know about CPG, which is that she saw the institution of marriage as wholly unfair on all involved. And so because the narrator is married to her doctor, that unfairness for want of a better word, is highlighted all the more. So that's how you use context, and hopefully that's helped you. And that is the end of session 5, a short but sweet one. You are more than welcome. What I'll do next session is look at the first person narrator very, very briefly. And so it'll be another short and sweet one next lesson.